Today we're covering the new silent ANABASIS M416 Frost Vortex build. We're gonna go through how it works, I'm gonna go through my mods, and I'm just gonna talk about in general about this gun, where it sits in the meta currently. Is it good? Is it bad? Should you get it or not? Does it perform well? You can get this gun from Blueprint Shop if you just buy it directly for 8,000 star chrome, but you will also be able to roll for it. In addition, you'll be able to get Icy Rain, Crank, and other blueprints here, but mainly the gun itself here. And this Wish Machine banner will be available on Phase 4, so these last two will be available. As for the burn shotgun, this will be after the Frost Vortex build video. I will also upload this, so stay tuned for that. These two banners will unlock on Phase 2. As you can see here, Destructive Flames and Blazing Fire now available on Phase 2. For the key armor parts for this gun, we will be using the Blueprint Fragment Snow Camo Gloves. And what they do is, when an ice crystal shatters, 4 additional ice missiles will launch at nearby enemies, dealing status damage equal to 40% PSI intensity to targets hit. And for players, it will be 60% damage instead of 40%. Also, it says Frost Vortex damage bonus applies. These gloves for highest damage is the best for this gun. There's also the Frost Tactical Vest, which is also not bad to use. But it says here, Frost Vortex generates ice spikes that deal frost damage of 100% PSI intensity. Now, while this does sound great and it does great damage, actually, Frost Vortex damage bonus multiplier does not work with this vest. So this is Frost Vortex damage bonus, and this works against Ice Crystals and Frost Vortex, but not for the vest. That's why we will not be using the vest, and we'll be using the Snow Camo Gloves instead. Now, it does launch 4 Ice Missiles, which is already, you can say that's about 160% damage total. So it's already better than the West. Now let's go and explain how this gun works. So you have 10% chance to trigger Frost Vortex on hit. If you shoot the target, 10% chance to trigger Frost Vortex. As you see, we're gambling with this gun. You either proc in first shot or you proc in 200 bullets. It's completely RNG. And you can see we triggered like 5 Frost Vortexes there. So that's how procs work on this gun. Now, it's 10% chance. You can increase this 10% to a maximum of 22%. If you go to your mods and go to your mask mods, click X on any Frost Vortex mod, and click here, you can see that there's Frost Vortex damage, there's Frost Vortex trigger chance. Frost Vortex trigger chance will be a lifesaver for this gun. It will make it way more efficient and more usable if you get Frost Vortex trigger chance on both of your mask and your weapon mods. Keep in mind, Frost Vortex suffix can be only put on mask and weapon mods. So helmet, top, pants, shoes, and gloves will be talents suffix, while mask and the weapon mod will be Frost Vortex suffix. What you want to aim for in the Frost Vortex suffix is Frost Vortex damage, of course, Frost Vortex trigger chance, and Frost Vortex duration. The Frost damage doesn't matter. The Frost damage is basically elemental 6% instead of 8%, so Frost Vortex duration is the way here. And the reason why Frost Vortex duration is because when you trigger Frost Vortex on this gun, you will spawn ice crystals if you shoot just one bullet. For example, I can shoot only one bullet and an ice crystal will spawn. You can see how shoot another bullet, I can shoot another bullet, ice crystals will keep spawning. That's how the gun works. Hitting a target that is affected by Frost Vortex, it will spawn an ice crystal. However, there's a cooldown of 1.5 seconds. And then ice crystals automatically shatter after 15 seconds, dealing frost elemental status damage equal to 100% PSI intensity. The range is insane, by the way. It has extremely huge range when the ice crystal shatters, so if you shot here, it will probably most likely do damage to this one. And ice crystals can be shattered by shooting them, which increases the damage they deal to 300 PSI intensity. And it will deal only 60% damage instead to players, meaning it's only good for PVE, and for PvP the damage will be very low. Now, as you saw, once you trigger Frost Vortex, and as soon as it's triggered, you shoot the target once, you will spawn crystals again. So you can shoot these crystals and you will deal more damage. As you can see, 9,200. Boom, 9,300. If you shoot them, you'll deal more damage. However, if you don't shoot them and just leave them hanging or leave them be, then the damage will be extremely low. Look at this. Boom, 1,886. So you want to shoot these crystals for sure when you see one. Now, last part is increases frost elemental damage by 60%. This is fake, and the gun has a bug in the description, or is just mistranslated, but this is wrong. And it increases by additional 20% for every ice crystal shattered for 10 seconds, stacking up to 15 times. This is also wrong. What really is happening here is I'm gonna go naked on my character to showcase this. So equip the weapon, and you can see that as soon as I equip the weapon, I have 20% more frost elemental damage. Now we do have an extra 5% because I unequipped a mask that had frost elemental damage 5% here, so it's a bug. Once you unequip it, it still stays for some reason, so it's actually 25% just because of the mask, but really, it's 20%. The gun gives you 20% frost elemental damage when you equip it. I'm gonna unequip it so you can see, and you can see that we have frost elemental 5% just hanging around there. So if I equip it again, boom. 20% is increased. So that's where we're getting the 20% from just wearing or holding the gun. It's not 60%. Now the last part where it increases 20% for every ice crystal shattered for 10 seconds, this stacks only max to 3, not 15. And I'm gonna show you. Our frost right now is 40.8. So I'm gonna shoot this one crystal, and as soon as I shoot it, it's still 40.8. Okay, we have one stack now. Shoot more, shoot another crystal. Now we will have 50.8, and I can shoot and trigger one more crystal. We will now have 60.8. And now we have 70.8. And as you can see, that is the max amount you can get. After you shatter 4 crystals, you can have only 50% elemental damage increase max. You can see 70.8. The effect is ending. Frost elemental damage bonus, it has ended. And now if we check our damage again, it is back to 40.8. So how it works basically is you gain 10% for shattering 1 crystal up to 3 stacks. So right now it's 40.8. I'm gonna do it again to showcase it. I'm going to shatter 1 crystal and it will increase it to 50.8 after this shatter. Boom, we shattered 1 again, and now it's 50.8. And again, the other 20% comes from just holding the gun. So that's to clear up the confusion about the attributes of the description. It's extremely misleading and misinformative. So now another bug that this gun has is if I keep triggering Frost Vortex, if I can trigger it, thank you. You can see right here, there's a passive called Frost Sense. And as I keep shooting, I will get frost damage 3% for 8 seconds, stacking up to 12 times. This is a bug. This comes from your Frost Sense Cradle, and I do not have it equipped. Even if I do not have it equipped, it will still show up. So it's completely bugged. However, even if it shows up, you do not gain damage bonus. Look at this. Frost elemental damage bonus is 40.8. And if I trigger Frost Vortex, it's supposed to give me 3% per Frost Vortex trigger, but it doesn't. So just another bug to know about. Now, if I equip the Frost Sense Cradle, what this Cradle does is every time you summon Frost Vortex, Ice Crystal, or Ice Spike, frost damage will be 3% for 8 seconds, stacking up to 12 times. You will gain 36% Frost Elemental damage bonus from this if you trigger Frost Vortex 12 times. That's how it works. So 40.8 right now we have. I'm going to swap to Icy Rain instead, so it doesn't interfere with my Frost Elemental damage bonus here. This is just an example on how the Cradle perk works. We have 5% right now, so if I trigger 1 Frost Vortex, we triggered 1 and we got an increase of 3% Frost Elemental damage bonus. And as you can see, if I trigger more, now we have Frost Elemental 11%. This is very buggy. The Frost Sense is very buggy. As you can see, we now have 46.8. After you swap weapons or after the buff ends, you will still keep the 36% Frost Sense for some reason. Anyways, the Cradle perk that we are using for the M416 is Anti-Void. When using rifles, weapon damage is 15%, and you will also get 15% status damage if you have this on. We're using Sky Operation for jump and glide speed, 50% and damage reduction. You could also use this Deviant Energy Defense. When you use it, you gain a shield of your max HP after using a deviation. You need to use Tactical Combo, weapon damage 25% for 4 seconds after switching weapons or reloading. Status Enhancement after hitting a weak spot, status damage is increased by 25%. Deviation Master, when you spawn a deviation, you gain 25% more damage against bosses or elites. Lone Walker, this is good for solo, you just get increased damage. This is very important. Sustained Suppression, continuous damage 25% for 4 seconds after inflicting continuous damage burn and Frost Vortex. So I'm gonna explain this real quick how it works. You have Frost Vortex damage bonus, and whenever you trigger Frost Vortex, it increases your Frost Vortex damage bonus over here, which is an insane boost of damage for your Frost Vortex. You need that. And lastly, Frost Sense is extremely important for this build too. I mean, how without it? 36% Frost Elemental damage bonus. You really need that. And that's it for the Cradle. Now we're going to go to the armor we are using and the calibration for the gun and the attachments I'm using. I'm still testing this build, so it's not like fully done. I'm still like experimenting with it, but I just put enough stability to make the gun not kick that much, and the gun doesn't really need that much accuracy. It's already accurate. This is what we are using for the attachments. And you could be putting a purple mag to make reload speeds faster. And I actually tested this. I kind of like the gun better with purple mag instead of gold mag, because the reload speed becomes slow and it increases the reload speed by almost 1 second. Now about this gun is I put a calibration and attack 25% and range 40%, and you lose 10% fire rate. Now the funny thing is with this gun, you don't want to make this gun shoot fast, you actually want to make this gun shoot slower. The reason for that is because, as you know, if you shoot a target that is affected by Frost Vortex, you generate an ice crystal and you have a cooldown of 1.5 seconds. So if you empty out your mag quick, you're gonna spawn very little ice crystals, while if you shoot slow, you'll have more time to spawn ice crystals. So that's why I kind of put this calibration. Now, I'm still testing this. I will probably most likely put magazine capacity for this gun or just reload speed. We could also put a fire rate calibration, and which will give us, you know, reload speed, but we'll lose attack and we'll get a lot of fire rate. Then we'd have to find a way to decrease our fire rate. If you do use this calibration, then your helmet mod would have to change and not have fire rate mods on it. Honestly, there's many calibration options you can go with. You can go with Vanguard style. After reloading empty, the next shot is guaranteed to trigger its keyword effect. However, you lose 12% damage. If you do that, you have a guaranteed way to trigger Frost Vortex the first time, which could be useful, but I'm probably not going to stick with this. I'll still test it though, however. Most likely, I'll probably stick with magazine capacity. However, the reload speed sucks for this calibration, so I don't know how this would work. I might take the fire rate and just change my helmet mod next time. Now, of course, for this calibration stats, you want to go with 2 elemental. There's nothing else you can go with. On the helmet mod, we're using a Deviation Expert, range minus 25%, and fire rate 10%, and status damage 20%. As you can see, my gun shoots very slow without this mod, so I'm gonna equip it and showcase it to you. It's almost like a Scar, but you can see how many ice crystals we spawned because of that. But if I put a Deviation Expert, this makes my gun shoot way faster. Like way faster. Now imagine we had the calibration of fire rate on this, it would go even more faster, which actually makes the gun perform a little bit worse, because again, of the ice crystal spawning cooldown. But really, if you put fire rate on the gun calibration, then the mod that I recommend to use, you could be using a Work of Proficiency. When you reload an empty mag, you gain reload speed 10% and elemental damage 20% for 5 seconds. The problem is though, however, with this gun, gets so much frost elemental damage bonus, and I'm gonna show you right now. So I'm gonna shoot the target. I'm going to trigger a lot of these ice crystals real quick. Now if I open my inventory, you can see how we have Frost Elemental damage bonus is 190.8, while status damage bonus is only sitting on 104%. So the problem is the unbalance of these two multipliers. You want to have these two multipliers, status and Frost Elemental, equal. around 150 and 150. If you have too much Frost Elemental, it's not good. It would be better to have more status damage and balance out these two multiplier values over here. If we take a look at how this gun Frost Vortex works, it traps enemies within a 4.5 meter radius, and it inflicts, based off your 30% PSI intensity, the Frost Vortex damage per second for 4 seconds, and up to 2 Frost Vortexes may exist at any time. So our PSI intensity is 432. Our actual damage of Frost Vortex will be 129.6, which will be 100 rounded. PSI intensity is what gives you this damage for this gun. Status damage gives you the damage too, Frost Elemental damage bonus, and damage bonuses to boss enemies, normal enemies, and elite enemies. And then lastly, the 10% Frost Vortex damage bonus, which comes from Cradle and the mods that I was talking about, such as this, Frost Vortex damage 3.6%. So for the helmet, I can only use Deviation Expert right now. I have no other option. It increases my status damage, which is what I really need for my multiplier. If I put elemental damage, I will lose a lot of damage. For the mass mod, we are using Lingering Frost Talents. The longer the duration of a Frost Vortex, the higher its final damage, up to 60%. So 1 second it will do, 15% damage. On 2 seconds it will do 30%, on 3 seconds 45%, and on 4 seconds 60%. It'll just keep increasing until it despawns. This is great. You want to have elemental damage on it, status damage, damage against gray ones, and the last one could be magazine capacity or just another PVE stat. On the chest piece, I'm using status damage 12%, elemental damage 4.8%, and magazine capacity 7.2%. Now, on the chest pieces, you can have, for example, any mod, any gold mod, and if it has elemental damage 8%, status damage 6%, and damage against gray ones 6%, that is way better than a blue mod. Gold mods are always better, of course, than a blue mod. If the stats are not great, then just stick with a blue mod instead. As for the pants mod, we're using Precision Charge. For every 10% weak spot you hit of the previous magazine, after reload you gain up to 24% elemental damage. Now, this depends heavily on your magazine size, so if your mag has 50 bullets, you will need to hit every 5 bullets you hit in the head, and after you reload, you will gain 4% elemental damage bonus. It's just based off your magazine size. Now, elemental damage and status damage and damage against gray ones is the stats you want for this mod. Now, instead of Precision Charge, you could be putting Bullet Siphon with elemental damage bonuses, or you can put a abnormal increase. When the magazine is empty, status damage 10% for 12 seconds. Effect can stack up to 3 times. While this sounds great, the elemental one is still better because you gain 24% after a reload, while this one requires stacking. Now, of course, if you had 20 bullets in the mag, then this one would be better because 30% status damage or 20% status damage is better than 24 elemental. Because remember what I said? Our multipliers are not equal and status damage is way lower than elemental damage. So that's why status damage would be more beneficial, but I'm still going with a Precision Charge. And lastly, for the gun itself, we are using a Vortex Multiplier. Max number of Frost Vortexes +1, so we can spawn up to 3 Frost Vortexes instead of 2. And Frost Vortex damage is +10%, which is a complete new multiplier, which boosts our damage by so much. So this is why it's the best mod. Now, there are many other mods that you could use, like Frosty Blessing. You get healed when the Frost Vortex disappears. While it does sound great, you'll lose a lot of damage for this if you do use it. There's also Frost Vortex applies Frostbite when Frostbite is active, vulnerability +4%, and movement speed -10%. This is great, but it's only a 4% damage increase. The Vortex multiplier spawns 1 Vortex, and you get additional 10% damage. So the last one we have is Shattering Ice. When an enemy at the center of the Frost Vortex is defeated, deal 50% PSI intensity ice damage to enemies within 1 meter once. So that's only if an enemy is killed inside the Frost Vortex. This is not that great for bossing because you won't really kill enemies inside Frost Vortex. However, for AoE damage like mobs and small minions, this mod is extremely great. As for my weapon tier list, where do I put this gun in PvP and PvE? In PvP, we are going to put this in B tier. The damage is way lower for PvP on players when you shatter crystals, and the crystal does not move when you spawn one. So the player is most likely not going to be at all near the crystal. Anyways, it's not that great for PvP because you still need to trigger Frost Vortex on the target, and you need to shoot the crystal. However, if you use this cloak piece right here for PvP, collapse in the center and keep pulling in 120% of enemies within Frost Vortex, then this gun might work out if you use this gun with together Icy Rain. All you could be doing is shooting with Icy Rain, trigger as many Frost Vortexes as you can, and you just, you know, shoot with HK, trigger your Ice Crystals. They spawn as soon as you shoot a target. However, the TTK or time to kill with this weapon is extremely low in PvP. You'll have max 2 to 3 seconds to react or shoot a target back with this gun. So it's just, I would say it's good with Icy Rain, a support weapon. You could slap like crit rate mods on it, so you can use this gun together with Icy Rain for PvP, and that would probably work. And for PvE, this gun sits in A tier. It is not an S tier because Frost Vortex trigger chance is very low with this gun. You're almost gambling every time when you shoot targets with it, and sometimes you can get lucky, sometimes you will not get lucky at all. And as you can see, the burn shotgun is sitting in A tier here as well. It comes close with the corrosion, but the corrosion is way better than this burn shotgun. As for the armor we are using, is just shelter pieces, one shelter hat, one mask, one top, one pants, and then we just have heavy duty on the shoes. Now, instead of heavy duty, I actually recommend to use Renegade so you reload faster when using this gun. And the key armor is just the snow camo gloves. We could be using the new armor set, which is the Blackstone armor set. You will just gain elemental damage for being in a cold or hot environment. Well, it is great. I kind of don't like the thing that you'll have to swap armors depending on the temperature you are in or the environment temperature. So I still went with Shelterer. All you need to do is just hit some headshots and you will gain that elemental damage increase right away. Now, when it comes to the deviations you want to use, do you use the Snow Sprite, which is the new deviation you get in the Way of Winter, and it's only obtained from killing Chaos Weavers or completing a side quest? What it does really is just generates ice crystals near the target every 3 seconds, and it will deal less damage than you actually spawn with your gun. However, it will cause them to take more frost damage after they're shattered. Or do we use the Jelly deviation, which does continuously deal frost status damage to surrounding enemies and force them to move towards you. Increases frost damage received by 36% to surrounding enemies, and if frost vortexes are formed inside the radius, it creates additional ice spikes. Honestly, the Snow Sprite gave us less DPS and it's more annoying to use. Or maybe I'm just using it wrong, but currently, right now, the Polar Jelly gives me more damage. Let's do a damage test real quick with this deviation. So, as you can see, the damage is not that great. One very important thing I forgot to mention is that this gun will be completely useless against Chaos Weavers, because Chaos Weavers are immune to status damage and any elemental damage weapons. So the only good weapons to kill them will be Memento, Willfire, Bingo, Bounce, MG4, and that's it. To farm Frost Vortex suffix mods, by the way, you will need to kill Chaos Weavers, as they are the only ones that will drop these suffix mods in the PVE scenario. If you are playing in a different server, you will need to do high risk events that drop you these suffix mods. Ladies and gents, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care and peace out.